Hey, hello everyone. Hope you all are doing good. So, welcome to today's topic, which is on CI/CD interview questions, part one. So, like if you haven't seen the Kubernetes interview questions, I have created a playlist. So, do check that out in our channel. And we'll be having different topics in this interview series. And each topic will have like separate parts so that it is easier to understand. So without further delay, let's jump straight into the today's topic. So the first question on CI/CD. So what is continuous integration? So continuous integration is a development practice where developers integrate code into a shared repository frequently. So it can range from a couple of changes every day or a week to a couple of changes in 1 hour in larger scales. So each piece of code, that is, it can be either a change or a patch, is verified to make the change to check whether it is safe to merge or not. So in today's world, it's a common practice to test the change using an automated build system that can make sure the code can be integrated. So this is the crux of continuous integration. So if we check this diagram, so this particular block is defining continuous integration. So the developers, they are trying to check out their code into version control, and then it is being compiled. Once the compilation is done, it is being packaged, and there are series of testing that is done to check whether the code is ready for integration. So this is on the continuous integration. Let's go to the next question. What is continuous deployment? So continuous deployment, it's a developer strategy which is used to release the software automatically into production, where any code commit must pass through an automated testing phase. Only when this is successful is the release considered production worthy. So this eliminates any human interaction and should be implemented only after production ready pipelines have been set with real-time monitoring and reporting of deployed assets. If any issues are detected in production, it should be easy to roll back to the previous working state. So the main important point to note down is, if there is a question on continuous deployment, you should remember that it's an automated process till the production. So there is no manual intervention. The build is deployed into production by the automated build system, and then we'll be having real-time monitoring and reporting system in place to check whether there is any issue or not. So that is continuous deployment. So if you see the diagram, this is continuous deployment. It is having all the stages, and till deploy to production, it is automated. So that is continuous deployment. Now let's go to the third question. Can you describe an example of CI or CD process starting from where the developer is committing a change or to the repository? So like there are different answers to this question because it mainly depends on what type of application we are deploying. And so far, like the stages will also change. But let's just list down the generic stages. So first it would be checkout, then we'll be building the code, then we'll be testing. It can be either UI related test or application code related test. Then we'll be doing a static analysis. Then we'll be reviewing the application. Once the review is done, we'll be approving it. Once the approval is done, we'll be merging the code into the main branch. Then the artifact is stored. Once the artifact is stored, we'll be deploying into a staging environment. So this is like a pre-production environment, and there will be automated tests that will be running in staging, and there will be manual testing, and there can be security scans to detect any vulnerabilities. Then we'll be deploying into the production. So once it is deployed to production, we'll be having monitoring and alerting in place. If there are any issues, we'll be rolling back. and there will be reporting and notification so that like the end users are notified. Once that is done, there will be completion and cleanup stage. So these are the generic stages which will be part of the CI/CD pipeline. So this diagram has a simplified version, like it can be plan, develop, build, test, deploy, and then operate. So we have listed down the stages. Now, say for example, if we want to put that into words, so a developer submits a pull request to a project. The pull request triggers two jobs, or it can be a combined job. Say for example, one job is doing a linting and the second job is doing a packaging of the code, and running multiple API scenario tests. Like this is the testing phase. So once all the tests are passed and the changes are approved, it is merged to the repository. If some of the tests failed, then the change will not be allowed to merge to the repository. So another aspect of this question would be, say for example, a developer pushes the code to the repository. A workflow is then triggered which will build the container image and pushed it to the registry. Say for example, it can be a registry where the Docker container image is stored. So once the image is stored, the Kubernetes cluster is applied with the new changes. So this is another version of the same answer. So what is continuous delivery? So we have seen continuous deployment where it is fully automated. Now coming to continuous delivery, the only change is there will be a manual review before applying it to production. So if you see the diagram, continuous delivery, all the other stages are like automated, but only whether when deploying to production, we'll be having a manual test, whether this change can be deployed to production or not. So to keep it in mind, to have it in memory, I'll give a small tip. So delivery, just note this word. So you can consider this like an e-commerce delivery where a delivery person will come to your home, check whether you're the correct person where the package should be delivered, and then they'll be delivering the package. So there is some kind of manual effort that is being put. So you can say like continuous delivery involves a manual check before the production. But in case of continuous deployment, it is an automated process. Next question, what is difference between continuous delivery and continuous deployment? So we just now saw continuous delivery, there will be a manual check before deploying into production. But in case of continuous deployment, it is a fully automated process. Next question would be, what is the CI/CD best practices you're familiar with, or why do you consider it as a CI/CD best practice? So we'll go through one by one. So commit and test often. So instead of a big commit, you should break down your commits into atomic commits, and then you should test the changes frequently, so that like you'll know like what is the change that has been committed, and you'll also have the confidence like in case of anything goes wrong, you can go to that particular commit and then revert it back. So that's the power of committing and testing often. And testing and staging environment should be a clone of the production environment. So it should be an exact replica so that you can test all your code inside this testing or staging environment before even pushing it to production. Clean up your environments, since like CI/CD will create lot of resources. So once this is deployed to production, it is a mandatory step to clean all our environments. The CI/CD pipeline should provide the same results when executed locally or remotely. So wherever the machine is located or the environment is located, it should provide the same result. So since the Docker image is being introduced, there is no such problem as it works on my computer, but it doesn't work in the developer staging or production environment. So Docker image contains all the necessary packages. And then once we deploy the application, the results should be the same. Treat CI/CD as another application in your organization, not as a glue code. So there should not be any patchwork. So it should be a complete code that can be deployed into production. On-demand environments instead of pre-allocated resources for CI/CD purpose. So this can be like whenever we are doing any test on the application, it should automatically spin up the necessary resources instead of having pre-allocated. Because pre-allocated, it might be making a toll on the billing. Since we'll be using public cloud, always running resources are not recommended. So it's better to switch to a on-demand environments. Next would be stages, steps, or tasks of a pipeline should be shared between applications or microservices. Don't reinvent common tasks like cloning a project. So there might be already pre-built stages that can be utilized instead of reinventing the wheel. So if you want to have a CI/CD pipeline, there might already be steps to clone the project, so you can make use of it. That's why like no need to reinvent the common task. Next question. So you are given a pipeline and a pool with 3 workers. So virtual machine, bare metal, and container. How will you decide on which one of them to run the pipeline? So the decision on which type of worker to use for a pipeline would depend on several factors, including the nature of the pipeline, the requirements of the software being built, the available resources, and the specific goals and constraints of the development and deployment process. So here are the some consideration that can help in making the decision. So first, it is pipeline requirements, resource availability, scalability and flexibility, deployment and isolation requirements, security considerations, development and operational workflows, cost considerations. So based on these considerations, the appropriate choice of the worker should be done. So it might also be useful to consult with the relevant stakeholders, developers, operations, infrastructure team to gather input and make an informed decision. So it's not like a one size fits all. So each application will be having its own set of requirements. So you should get it as a checklist, consult with different teams, and make the final decision. Next question. Where do you store CI/CD pipelines and why? So first, it can be app repository where the application resides. So this is the popular one. Say, for example, if you are using GitHub or GitLab pipeline, there will be a YAML code that can be defined, which stays along with the application code. It can be also there in central repository. And so this will be like a separate repository, and the application repository should trigger this central repository. And CI repo for every app repo. So there will be a separate CI related code from application code, but you don't need to put everything in one place. So I think this is a worst option due to maintenance. So better to have it in the application repository itself instead of a separate repo. Next question. How do you perform capacity for your CI/CD resources like servers, storage, etc.? Capacity planning for CI/CD resources involves estimating the resources required to support the CI/CD pipeline and ensuring that the infrastructure has enough capacity to meet the demands of the pipeline. So here are some steps. Analyze the workload, monitor current usage, identify resource bottlenecks, forecast future demand, plan for growth, consider scalability and elasticity, evaluate cost and budget, continuously monitor and adjust. So by following these steps, we'll be able to do the capacity planning. Next question. How would you structure or implement CD for an application which depends on several other applications? Implementing CD, that is continuous deployment for an application that depends on several other applications, requires careful planning and coordination to ensure smooth and efficient deployment of changes across the entire ecosystem. So here are some steps. Define the deployment pipeline, automate the deployment process, version control and dependency management, continuous integration and testing, rolling deployments, monitor and manage dependencies, testing across the ecosystem, rollback and recovery strategies, security and compliance, documentation and communication. So implementing CD for an application with dependencies requires careful planning coordination. So by following the above steps, we'll be able to achieve that. Next question, how do you measure CI/CD quality? Are there any metrics or KPIs you are using for measuring the quality? Measuring the CI/CD process, it's crucial to identify areas for improvement, ensure efficient and reliable software delivery. So here are some of the metrics. So first is build success rate. This is nothing but the percentage of successful builds compared to the total number of builds. A high build success rate indicates that the majority of the builds are successful and the CI/CD pipeline is stable. Second would be build and deployment time. This is a metric that measures the time it takes to build and deploy changes from code commit to production. Faster build and deployment time indicates shorter feedback loops and faster time to market. Third is deployment frequency. This measures the frequency of deployments to production within a given time period. High deployment frequency indicates faster release cycles and more frequent updates to production. Mean time to detect. This metric measures the average time that it takes to detect the issues or defects in the CI/CD pipeline or production environment. Lower MTTD indicates faster detection and resolution of issues, leading to a higher quality and more reliable deployments. Next is MTTR, which is mean time to recover. So this metrics measure the average time it takes to recover from issues or incidents in the CI/CD pipeline or production environment. Lower MTTR indicates faster recovery and reduced downtime, leading to higher availability and reliability. Sixth would be feedback loop time. So this is the time taken to receive the feedback on code changes, including code reviews, test results, and other feedback mechanisms. Faster feedback loop times enable quicker iterations and faster improvement in the CI/CD process. Seventh is the customer satisfaction. So once the code is deployed to production, the end customer should use the application and provide his feedback. So this will ensure to build a high quality software that meets the customer expectations. So end of the day, it is all for the customers. So this is another important metric. So these are the important metric to deliver a high quality software. So these are some of the questions that are part of the part one. So in the next part, I'll be handling the few examples like the popular tools like Jenkins and GitHub, which is used to construct the CI/CD in different projects and applications. So if you like my content, so you can subscribe to my channel, which is DevOps Motivation. And thanks a lot for your time. See you in the next video. Have a good day.